Yeah, I guess I should give an intro because we have call-ins from Jason, a really bunch of call-ins awesomely from Arlen, who pushes back at Jason for his unsanctioned negativity. Well, or not really wanting to do homework to run a historical game. And then we have recaps because games are awesome and I love to play them. Joe Richter chimes in because, one of these days we're going to get him in our Warhammer fantasy game. So, hope you all enjoy. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you guys soon.
Hey, Carl. Yeah, I guess a primer would help. I think it falls down to kind of what I said is real world, we think of it serious. Where fantasy, I think we don't take it as seriously. And maybe that says something about us as players. I don't know. But I think somewhere deep down, that's what it is. So, yeah, maybe a primer would help. I like to say I'll play whatever and I'd study whatever. I just wouldn't be as excited about it. As far as 7 Seas, yeah, it's the rules and the setting, to be honest. Sorry. The Savage World setting I was thinking of was actually 50 Fathoms. 50 Fathoms, not Pirates of the Spanish Main. Although I've heard great things about Pirates of the Spanish Main, I'd be happy to play either one. Okay, let me listen to your session recap.
I feel like I have 50 Fathoms, or maybe I compared 50 Fathoms and Pirates of the Spanish Main, but because Pirates of the Spanish Main may have been based more on history, I think I stuck with that one. I've run a session of Pirates of the Spanish Main with my wife, Amy, and it would be really cool to pick it up. I feel like 7C is going to be a hard sell for you, Jason, because of the system, although it is narrative-y like you like, and you get to roll a bunch of dice like you like, but it's just that getting over that hump of being in a world that sounds like our real world but is not, with all the different names. And I can admit that I was hung up about it. But as far as historical games and 7C go, though, I will let the next caller talk to you about maybe trying to sell you, and maybe both he and I can get you to play some 7C or some historical games. Or games like Harn, where there is a consistency to the history.
Sup, Carl? It's Arlen. Really enjoyed your last episode. The session recap was a lot of fun. Sounds like you guys are having a blast with that campaign, which is really cool. And yeah, that's really cool. Definitely not Kitty Warhammer from the sound of it. So anyway, the other thing I was going to push back a little bit on kind of Joe and Jason's comments, because I don't actually think you need that much. So the Harn game, Jason commented on my knowledge of Harn, and I think he overestimates my knowledge of Harn a little bit. I have a fair bit of knowledge of like the real medieval world, and Harn is based on the real medieval world a lot more so than kind of other fantasy worlds are often. But I, basically just, paid attention to the information that was on my character sheet to figure out kind of what was going on. I read a little bit of background stuff, but I did not, sift through pages and pages of material or do a ton of research or anything like that. I almost exclusively just used the information that was, in the character's background that you had provided on Roll20 to kind of come up with what I figured out that I knew about the world. So I don't think you need to necessarily know that much about a historical world. You probably, there's some stuff, but that you would probably know that you'd want to, but I think that the GM could pretty easily put together, like a short primer on the world and basically say like, hey, this is the stuff that you need to know. And for most games, it probably wouldn't be that long. Like a Napoleonic game, if you were going to be like soldiers in one of the armies, you would have kind of a little bit of political knowledge of the wider world, but most of your knowledge of the setting would probably just come from the kind of emergent, stuff that happens as you go on, combat raids and are, given orders and all of that sort of stuff that you wouldn't need to start with that much information, I don't think, to play something like that. But Anyway, I think that, and that goes back to some of the stuff that I think is kind of cool. Like, I think that the world of Traveler sounds cool. I'm not that enamored with the mechanics of Traveler from what I've seen, but that's okay. I'm sure that it'll be a fun game when we get around to playing it. I just, might not be the be all end all game for me. But 7th Sea in particular, we've been talking on Discord, and I really enjoyed the stuff about 7th Sea. I think it's an interesting world, and it's got kind of a good blend of things.
See, Jason, 7th Sea, it looks like we're going to do it. But I really appreciate, Arlen, your comments on the Warhammer Fantasy, on the Harn game. And Jason, if I did not give enough backstory or context for your sailor guy to get into the world, I apologize, and I will try to do better, or maybe prompt and ask some questions about your character and what they think about things, so that you can better play in that world. But I do agree with Arlen. You really don't need to know a lot, and maybe Arlen's character was a bit more complex and complicated because he was with a part of a holy order and that worshipped a particularly vicious war god, and had some background and context and motivation maybe to continue. It's probably a harder sell for someone who's not as invested with a particular organization in the world, right? The only thing that your guy's investment was the boat. He's invested in the running and seeing to of the boat, and might know about, the history of his fisherman parents, where they were from, the history of the city that they lived near, or the country in which the city was. But you're right, that might be about it. Is that enough to play? I feel like you can still do emergent type play in the historical context. But Arlen's going to try to sell you about 7th Sea even more.
That are pretty cool. So like their explanation of sorcery is kind of neat, where it's like sorcery is associated with nobility, and so that's part of why the nobles have like a sort of divine right of kings thing going on in a way, and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, the point that I'm getting at is just that I think there's some cool stuff in that game, and I'd like to try it out. There's a couple other, we were talking about a couple other pirate games, and there's a couple others that I think could be also cool. And then, but yeah, finally, I think a historical, or a kind of historically informed game, I guess is the way to put it, for something like Harn or 7th Sea, where it's like, not real history, but it's sort of heavily based on real history. I don't think that's actually that hard for players to get into. Or rather, I think there are options for players who don't want to get kind of deep into the world and the lore and all that sort of stuff, that, they could, yes, if you play like a courtier who's at like the court of the king, they're going to need to know a fair bit about what's going on in the world probably to succeed. But if you want to play just like a farm boy who, his village is destroyed during the war, and so now he's, decided to take up an oath of vengeance against the people who destroyed his town, you don't need to know very much about the world to play that character, because that character probably doesn't know a whole lot about the world, right? So anyway, I think that's an interesting thing. That to me, I don't know. I guess I feel like that there's definitely options for ways for players who are intimidated by an intense world to not need as much information to play. And in a lot of like literature and films and things like that, there's ways that other media that people get around the limitations of like the audience's knowledge, right? So like you look at Bilbo knows a fair bit about the Shire. And so when we start The Hobbit, there's a sort of explanation about the Shire, but Bilbo doesn't know very much about the world at large. And he is pretty successful despite that, right? He kind of learns on the go the way that a player could, right? I think that's I don't think that would be too uncomfortable, really. I think that would be just fine. So, but that's just me and what I like to play and what I'm comfortable with and all that sort of stuff. I'm more concerned with kind of knowing and understanding the mechanics often than I am with understanding the world. And that's just me kind of wanting to have a solid grasp of how I can engage with the system.
Yeah, Arlen, I think we're going to have to figure out a way to do 7th Sea. And actually, maybe we could, you and I, here's an idea. We could come up with like a story arc and GM, like co-GM. Maybe that's a kind of a cool idea, because I know you like the mechanics and are very interested in the world. And if we both sell it to people, maybe that'd be twice as likely to get people to play, which might be kind of neat. And I definitely agree with you. I know the onus is on me now as an actionable, like I think I've said already somewhere, that for these games that have a lot of rich backstory and not a rich backstory, really a rich chronology and a consistent chronology, that, like a medieval world such as Harn or Traveler, or a game based or informed by history or a historical backdrop like a Roman game, or set in the Napoleonic era or in the colonial times, then I really need to develop a primer for people who are not as well versed, and that's on me at the GM to do so. So I think, and with Harn, I would really like the Harn world, and I think it's rich, and like you guys have commented, and what you just kind of reiterated is that the system is what's important to you, and Burning Wheel or the Riddle of Steel could really work, I think, in Harn, or on that planet, whether we do a game traditionally set in one of the countries on the island of Harn or somewhere else on the planet, maybe something more Scandinavian influenced or informed, which would be kind of neat. And there would definitely be a primer. I'd want to really use Burning Wheel or Riddle of Steel type motivation, so the campaign would be more character driven. They may be given a mission here and there, but those missions would align with the motivation. So, for example, in the Caldor game, if you were agents of someone important, then the missions would be something that would help you advance in the agency, or something to do with your advancement in the nobility or vengeance or duty, something like that, to your patron. So I think it would be pretty neat. It'd be really fun. So thanks for all the calls, Arlen, and we will talk to you soon.
Yo, Carl, you are selling me on Warhammer, man. Like I said when I first said that it was my least favorite role-playing game, I did say that was probably due to the Dungeon Master, or whatever they're called in Warhammer. But yeah, man, your campaign really sounds awesome, dude. I love that your players are getting into it. You guys are you're getting deep into the campaign. And I think that's great. I hope you guys finish it off, because I know that's like an epic campaign. And yeah, man. So, am I surprised that the person who thought soup was more formal than a roasted pig would ruin a game system for me? No, I'm not. Peace out.
I think I need to know more about that soup and pig story. Soup and pig and soup, the pig stew. Stuck pig. There is a swimming pig nearby at a place called Aquarina Springs in San Marcos, where you can watch, you go on this glass bottom boat thing and you see a pig swimming, and the pig swims with mermaids. So yeah, it is weird. It is weird and kitschy and 70s-ish, but yeah, that's Aquarina Springs. I would like to hear that soup and pig story. And I just want to say that with a Warhammer game, it's a well-written adventure, It gives the players a lot of options. Yes, there's a central plot going on, and my players and I agreed that we would pursue this plot. But what they feel and they've communicated with, it doesn't feel like they're being pushed towards this. There are things now that are important to the players, and there are mechanics and vehicles within the game, for example, short-term and long-term goals that the players get a reward for completing, that now the players can say, my short-term goal in this last set of adventures or vignettes in Bogenhofen was to save the town because we knew something was up. And now their long-term goal is to find out about this damn cult that's invaded their lives, right? You know, from the person who was the false inheritor / doppelganger to now almost destroying their town and messing with someone that they're now allies with, the von Bildhofens, the Grand Duke Gustav and his son Primus, who now they have changed the fate of that young man, which I think is kind of neat. And really, it's the players, man. They buy in. They buy into the verse. They love it. I love that my friend who plays like what is it? He is playing the player who is a courtier and has switched to a duelist through the course of play. This was the same player who cut off the penis of the lordling. He went into a murderous hobo rage, tracking down and killing the cultists in the streets, in the shadowed, foggy streets of Bogenhofen. So it's kind of went red. This is the same player who actually took down the demon, ran it through in its mouth gut. It was a weird freaking demon, creepy ass demon too, because it could change into like the forms, and its preferred form was like this prepubescent young boy. It was disturbing, especially when they realized that this person also slit the throat of a magistrate. Anyway, kudos to the players. They really bought in and get into it. I would say they don't ham it up, but they definitely get into character, and maybe do some foolish things like Ulrich, charging the sorcerer. Probably not the smartest thing, and he almost died for it. But hey, he's a wrestling champion of Schaffenfest, so why wouldn't he? We have the secret champion, Joust champion in the group too, who now has a vicious killer pit bull dog that is his boon companion and has spilled blood with him. And we all know that Fang, the Chilean pit bull, is the hero of the tale anyway. I'm sure he's telling all his animal friends and companions that have friended him on the Twitters or on a Snapchat or whatever, Instagram. They don't have that in Warhammer Fantasy, because that would make it even more juvenile and kid-like to Jason Connerly. So anyway, thanks for those words. Hopefully we can get you one of these days into a Warhammer game with the right people and in the right context. There, Joe Richter, always a pleasure to have you call in and make some cool comments. But really, it's all the players. They're having a lot of fun, I think. So next time we pick it up, though, we're going to be switching to Death on the Reich, which is book 2 in The Enemy Within. So that should be pretty neat. I got to do some prep. Not a lot of some. I got to do some prep to get it ready and to fit it into the adventure as a whole. They did get a clue from the last time on where to go next if they want to take down this cult and save the universe. So we'll see what they do and how they go about it. It should be pretty neat. This morning, some of my fellow anchorites, I ran a game of DCC Fantasy. I'm running it in a world I'm using products from the Echoes of Fomalhaut fanzine produced by Gabor Lux of the First Hungarian D20 Society, or EMDT, and it's made for OSR, old school type games, but I really thought and felt that it had a really neat DCC Gonzo-ish vibe. So I've given out some cosmology of the world as I conceive it. It is part of a solar system, and I used the Fomalhaut, actual real Fomalhaut system as a backdrop. It is a trinary system, but it is not sort of it's a P series orbital, so the orbitals are not like close at all and around. Yeah, it's not like a 3-body problem S series orbital, and it is a primary blue star that is main sequence, a little bigger than our own star, but it has 2 red dwarf companions that are at a distance. So there is a name for the actual star. It is probably not called Fomalhaut. It is just called the sun to the people of this world. And the 2 red dwarfs are called the Wayward Sisters because they have eccentric orbits sometimes. One of them flares for 10 days out of the month, or has a waxing, waning flare period 10 days out of the month. And I just added some more cosmology. This system, as I might have mentioned, has all this debris in the system. It actually has accretion disks in orbit around the system, suggesting collisions here and there of planetary bodies. So there is a lore of meteorite showers in the verse. They probably have to happen often. They've destroyed civilizations more than likely. The moon itself is a moon more like the moons around Mars, Phobos and Deimos, as opposed to our own Luna. And it might be, as the mythology suggests, used to be a whole sphere, but now is broken particles, which also contributes to the debris that might rain down on Erin, which is the name I called the quote-unquote Earth. So I kind of added this in as I think about it. It's not written down anywhere. I don't know if the players write it down, and they might, which is cool. Hopefully I'm consistent in my memory of it. But if I'm not consistent, well, you hear different tales about cosmology from different cultures around the world. So there you go. So one can ascribe the inconsistencies to that. I had one of my players, Jason Connerly of Nerds RPG Variety Cast, introduce his character. His character is a mystic, a wizard. As a DCC character, there's these marauders around this red mound that he has a mission to go to. His patron, not having listened to him or doesn't think anything of him, so therefore he feels he needs to do a mighty deed for his patron. At the top of this mound is the altar of a rival god, and it must be destroyed. He is a mystic. He is feared by the marauders of the Red Wastes, and he of the Broken Wastes, I believe they're called. And he kind of walks through their camp. Many fear him as he walks through. Maybe I had a chieftain approach him and ask what he is doing, and describes that there are infidel defilers that they have chased to this mound, and will he punish him? And Idris says, "Yeah, sure. Hey, if you're asked if you're a god, you say yes." So Idris says, "Yes, I have a mission to cleanse this site." So the marauders go, "Okay," and they let him go. So he kind of climbs to this mound. This mound has the stairs carved into the rock going up. He finds the first cave and sees evidence of the other players being there. Becomes a big running joke since I describe, how do you know things were there? Well, because the animals poop everywhere, right? So I described that there's scat, like reptilian scat, probably camel for sure scat. So Jason's character, yes, he decides to taste the scat, and that becomes a running joke that he has seen and tasted that this camel is probably not being fed correctly and not taken care of. That becomes a running joke. And in fact, Jason's character is called subsequently by other players the Shit Eater. Sorry, kids, but yeah, that's what happened. So Idris, Shit Eater, the Necromancer, Idris Shit Eater Khan, climbs up the rest of the way, sees where there is a split in the path, but continues on the path where there are carved stairs, and he sees some more camel dung. So he finds the hole where the wailing sound comes from that pours down from this mound, and finds the side passage, the hidden passage down into the grotto where the other players are camping. So one of the players on watch sees him. They introduce themselves. Idris tells him he's on a mission from his patron or his god to destroy something that is an affront to his god, and he will help the players with his magic and mysticism if they help him. So an agreement is reached, and they rest for the night. They travel up the other side path, which is a little treacherous. It would have been very interesting. So the mechanic was, unless the players take precautions, and I felt like I give them a hint, but they did not take the hint, then on a 1 in 6, there's a chance that they slide down the mountain and take a lot of damage, probably die. They do not take those precautions, but no one rolls a 1, so we do not have any hilarious tumbling down the side of the red mound. They find this cave, and they explore it. The dwarf smells gold. They cross over a pit. The pit has giant beetles that are down at the bottom, but the beetles are in a there's a torpor about the beetles. I rolled on my reaction table, my old school reaction table, and they never become aggressive. They just kind of remain neutral and content down there at the bottom of the pit. It's about a 60-foot pit. There's probably plenty of food down there. So yeah, they're fun. They're having fun. The beetles, they don't rush up and attack. Maybe they're stuck. Who knows? They find this offering cave, the players do, and they find some nice monetary treasure, gold and gems. And interestingly, Idris, so I guess I should explain. So there's 4 players. Step back. There are 4 players. Idris, played by Jason. Ardath, played by Arlen Walker from Live from Pellam's Wasteland. And it's Ben Benefried, who so Ardath is a fighter. Benefried is a cleric of Amantur, the god of riddles and secrets, and that is played by B.J. Boyd of the Arcane Alienist. And then we have another player who does not have a podcast, who's playing Otto, a dwarf. So they're in this offering room. They find gold and gems. Idris, while Benefried holds a torch up, Idris reads the whole history of why this cave is here, who is buried or laid here to rest in the tomb, and he finds that it is the last of the moon, what are called the Moon Kings, who had a powerful land that was lush, filled with ziggurat-style pyramids, and one of their last kings, I think I named him Gornamesh or something like that, is laid to rest here, and the offerings are to him by his descendants. But the player saw that this has clearly not been visited for a long time. There's a passage beyond and he reads the whole history of this. There's a history of some sort of sword and some curse, and Jason's character rolled really well. There's probably things that I didn't quite describe that might come back to him as he read this whole tale. So they know that there's something, and some curse of undeath, blah, 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 written on these pictographs in this history of this person who might be laid to rest here. They go to the next room. It slopes down to a sort of tomb where there are 4 skeletons in a lotus position sitting in front of these brass or copper bowls. And on a plain stone throne is a giant of a creature, a skeleton, but seemingly of a man, but a man with a hole where a third eye could be, or maybe that's how this creature died, right? Anyway, it is 12 feet tall. So Ardrath goes over and smashes one of the skeletons that are sitting there. They have not animated yet, but yes, they do animate after he destroys one of those skeletons. Benefried calls upon the holiness of Amantor to turn these undead and the other 3 skeletons, after jumping up and attacking Ardath, flee towards the back of this room. Ardath strikes one, injures it. Meanwhile, the giant skeleton is also animated. And Otto, after Idris, who said he was going to be helpful, enlarges the dwarf, charges the creature. And the creature, the other interesting thing about this creature, it has a magical, or a glowing 2-handed sword that is made of some sort of glass-like bluish stone. And right, so they fight this creature. The skeletons are, one of the skeletons is destroyed as it flees by Ardath. They fight this creature. It's a back and forth. They're smashing into this creature. A really cool thing about DCC, and I feel like why this encounter worked, it could have been pretty devastating because the creature was doing a lot of damage to Otto the dwarf in combat, but right behind him was Benefried healing him up. He'd go down to like a few hit points and back up to full, and down to a few hit points and back up to full, and that went on for a few rounds. At some point, Ardrath did disarm this giant creature with 3 eyes and a fanged mouth, the skeleton with 3 eyes and a fanged mouth, and the moon blade clatters to the ground, and then the creature claws, but eventually the heroes defeat it, take the sword as a prize. Idris tells a bit of the story. I think he told some of the story. I'm not sure he told about all of the properties. They do discover that it is a magical blade of some power. So yes, Ardath claims it, and the heroes survive. They take a breather down here in this place. Feel like they collect those copper bowls, and then go up to the top. At the top is an altar to Manure, the god of something colors. I don't remember the exact name, but for those of you, it definitely is a allusion, perhaps, or a reference to Call of Cthulhu. And if you can imagine, what if a color from outer space was worshipped as a deity? That could be what this might be. Who knows? No one really knows for sure. It's all speculation. But hey, the party has a crowbar. Idris is out of spells that can really destroy it, but he reduces the altar, rolls really well on his spell casting check, reduces the altar. They break it apart, but Manoyor has heard or seen what is happening, and that his altar on this world is being defiled. A creature appears with an explosion. Otto and Benefried are knocked back, but Benefried has the presence of mind to stand and cast a spell, summoning the power of Amantor to banish this foul creature. And it works. The creature, with the stones of the altar, is dragged by these silvery chains over the side of the mound. The altar is destroyed. The creature, summoned by Mjolnir's wrath, is silenced. And and I guess it's a good and a bad, right? Idris has completed the task with his companions for his patron, but perhaps they've incurred the wrath of another god of some sort. So the dust starts blowing as Idris's patron responds to this destruction of a sacred place of worship of the god's rival. The bowl where the altar is starts filling with sand. The players retire down the red mound, and we will pick up where we left off in a couple weeks and see if they go down the mountain and confront the marauders, or take one of the enameled paths that are provided to them that they discovered last time. So we'll see what happens. Really fun session. Players just really got into it, and I really enjoyed the emergent play and interaction between all the players. It's really fun to make up some lore about the world as well as we went, and honestly, that was all spontaneous. All I get is a framework in this sort of encounter. All I received was a framework, big skeleton sitting on a tomb. I add some other things to challenge the party, the lore. We just kind of came up with as we went, which I think is a great way and fun interplay between the players, and really why I feel like DCC lends itself to that. You can kind of be a little off the wall and do strange things, and there's some fun and humor in it, and I think we had a good time. Defeated the monsters, set things to right for Idris and his standing with his patron, and survived the day. It's a good session. I'll talk to y'all soon. Hey everyone, it's Sunday, so you know what that means. That means that I had at least 2 games, maybe sometimes 3. So I will kind of recap 2 of them. Doesn't seem like we're going to be playing the Deadlands. I know many of you are disappointed because you love those Deadlands and those Deadlands recaps with my Sunday gaming group. But hopefully in 2 weeks we'll pick that back up. I think they just wanted a little break. Maybe the trauma of nearly getting squished by a bunch of devil bats was too much. So I played this morning. I played in Arlen Walker's Astonishing Swordsmen and Sorcerers of Hyperborea Valoria game. And herein we are exploring and suddenly a wilderness that has been opened up by the Empire to find gold and glory. So previously we had found an entrance to a dungeon below. So we went back to town, bought a bunch of gear and items to explore that said dungeon. And then we went to go check it out. So we did a lot of exploration. Arlen did a great job putting in that dynamic lighting that I know we all love so well from Roll20. I mean, it is painstaking because I've tried to do it, and I definitely appreciate Arlen's efforts. And what I just don't like is how Roll20, for example, does the dynamic lighting on pillars. But other than that, I like it. I think it's neat. I like that not knowing what's around the corner feeling. So we fought a lot of undead lizards and undead lizard creatures, or snake men. Maybe they were snake men. But we fought them in several situations. We found some magic weapons. My character, he himself got a blade, a sword, and then we had an in-character dispute between my character and one of the other players' characters who was playing the mage in the party. And it was basically over loot because my character had nearly died, was still feeling some trauma from that, was kind of skulking in the back, waiting for his opportunity. There was an item of magic that was picked up by the mage, who took it, and I was like, it's a great weapon or a great tool for a thief or burglar. But my character Felix, feeling petulant about it, wanted something because everyone else is getting magic items and cool stuff, and he's got a potion. But that's the way he is, and I guess this is a defense of the strategy of this is what my character would do. Yeah, he would act like an asshole, nearly being killed, and feeling that he's getting the short end of the stick, even though he's put his life on the line and done his duty for the players. You just want him to go up in front and get whacked and look for, tricks and traps. Well, actually, they didn't really even ask. So it was kind of weird. It was a strange session, honestly, and we worked things out at the end. It was a lot of in-character play that maybe we were either not in our first couple cups of coffee for, or just not ready for. Anyway, Soriandrin, the mage, and Felix, my character, the thief, got into an argument in character about a cool item that was found, a longsword, which in ASSH a mage cannot use, but a thief can. And it was like, well, I go up there and I fight, but I don't have the tools. And so Felix said, yeah, I want that sword because I haven't gotten anything. So Soriandrin threw it at him. I thought he was going to throw it like at him, like as a weapon, but he tossed it at his feet and stormed off. We were already pretty badly injured at this time, so I think the rest of the players are like, well, we're down 2 short, because one of the other barbarians had been injured the previous time and was kind of watching the horses. So we decided after exploring this room and listening at another door, which you probably figure were more undead creatures, we walked out of the tomb, sealed it back up, went back to town, and geared up for another sojourn in the next day. Hopefully, I mean, the last times we've gone, the issue is then that more 8 men arrive and guard their sacred space, and we might have to face 8 men or other beast men of some sort because it's a holy site to them. So that's a risk we're going to take, and we'll see how it goes. And that'll be the next time. There, a short recap of ASSH Voluria. I really enjoy Hyperborea and the way that the game runs. It's one of my favorite games, and I'm so glad that Arlen has brought it to the table. And I'm a little bit envious because I'd love to restart the Hyperborea game that I did. I was had running a while ago, but just I believe players lost interest. Probably miscommunication on my part, or the way things were doing, or whatever. People got busy, life events got in the way, and that kind of can happen in a long-term campaign, unfortunately. Anyway, that's the first game I played this morning. Not that it is a railroad, but I also played in Kevin Madison from Dungeon Musings. I played in his Ravnica Downton in Sector 6. And, well, my character almost died. Holy shit, Kevin's mean. No, he's not. My character almost died. Like, we started out when we were fighting this kind of creature. It was a weird amalgamation of squid and dinosaur and beaked plant, like Audrey from that musical, Little Shop of Horrors. Anyway, so my character is like I play a Minotaur who is a Path of the Berserker barbarian. He is like, doesn't like the talkie. Let's get to some action. He jumps in the water. He starts fighting this thing. It like hacks and burns him and injects acid into him. I probably should have raged beforehand to mitigate some of that, physical damage. But the acid really hurt. And he got wrapped up, got knocked into unconsciousness after he jacked up this kind of creature. But hey, his companions helped while he was glugging and probably was going to drown. I made my first death save, but yeah, I had other players who helped, and they got him back to consciousness, and eventually we prevailed. It was actually pretty cool. It's kind of, for all the people I know who y'all are out there, my 15 or so listeners, maybe 50% of you play like this old school game and say that 5e, it's too easy. No characters ever die. But hey, my character was down and dying and drowning. If not for the quick thinking of other players, he would have died. But they healed him up. He hacked, thrashed his head and cut through with his horns into this creature, and we prevailed. It was pretty cool. It was a really good, and then we traveled some more in this underground place here in Sector 6, and we finally found the vault that we wanted to enter. And my character and another player character and an NPC, we had these kind of medallions that opened this gate to this vault. We had discussed earlier the night before that we were going to open the vault. We were all going to share the treasure that we found within, whatever it may be. And it was a pretty cool little council meeting. Again, my character doesn't talk much, but carries a big stick. So anyway, we kind of decided we were going to support the status quo. The next day we opened this gate, and creatures came out. We started fighting them, and we were prevailing, but one player character, he healed one of them up with some lightning, and my character hacked. But we're in the middle of combat. It's a really fun game. I really love how Kevin Madison of the Dungeon Musings Media Empire has thrown together this Ravnica tale. It's a really good publication from Wizards, and kind of blends their magic with D&D. And I enjoy it a lot, and I love playing a beat 'em up. I don't have to think so much. I just gotta run, charge, hack, stab. We kind of like that, Sometimes as players, we don't want to think too much, and we just want to swing our swords or axes or stab with our horns if you're a minotaur. Yeah, it was a fun game. I think hopefully we'll get into the dungeon part next time. We'll, go through the vault, or now that we've opened the vault, we're to go down and find the big treasure, right? Everyone wants it, but no one except for, my character is going to get it. Whether the other player characters, pile on and protect, we'll see. But I have a plan, and it'll be kind of cool. It's going to involve lots of blood and lots of battle axe hacking and horn stabbing. It'll be awesome.